Hello again. In the tutorial today we're going to cover taking a long exposure webcam shot of Orion, working right through capturing your images in the first place through to processing until your final image, just to sort of get you started really, and that's why we're going to use Orion, because it's probably the easiest one out of all the DSOs to do. Now we're going to need a couple of things. What I would urge you to do is to get yourself one of these. They're covered in another tutorial, the Batinov mask, and it really is, for imaging, probably one of the best £15–20 you'll ever spend. It makes your focusing a hell of a lot easier. And then obviously you're going to need one of these, which is your long exposure webcam, which possibly looks like this, might be a little bit different, and you'll have a switch somewhere for switching to long exposure mode and short exposure mode, because we're actually going to use both modes when we're taking our Orion shots, and we'll sort of go through that. You might notice on mine I've got this stuff on it, which is coiled cable tidy, and it's actually this stuff, and I found it very useful. This particular one I found it's very flexible and quite soft and smooth, and it's a 10mm coiled cable tidy. I got it off eBay. The only thing is I've ended up with like 10 meters of it, but it's reasonably cheap, and it's recommended because as your cables are sort of hanging about all over the place and your scope's moving about, it helps a lot to stop any snagging, you know, catching your cables up on anything. And because of the extra weight that it adds, it makes everything just hang that little bit better and neater. It keeps everything more tidy really. Now on the other end of your camera, obviously you will have your USB lead and a serial connector. Now, all well and good if you've got a serial adapter on your laptop. If not, then you're going to want one of these, which is the serial to USB adapter, and preferably you want one with the Prolific chipset. They're just a lot more compatible in most Astro gear. You know, just perform the best of all. So you know, that's your adapter. So what we're going to do first of all then is we'll go over to sort of just having a look at Orion and getting everything set up and sorting focus out and everything, and we'll work steadily through it. So we'll catch you in a moment. Right, first of all we're going to familiarise ourselves with the target. Now here we have the Orion constellation, and most people are familiar with Orion's belt, which is the 3 stars in a row like this. And then up on the left we have Betelgeuse, which is an orangey coloured star, quite a bright star. We're also going to use that in this tutorial, and you'll see why shortly. Now to find the nebula itself, if you come down from the middle star, you'll usually start to see it here. Now a lot of the time, if it's a nice clear night, you can see that with the naked eye. It looks like it's a group of stars, but it's sort of fuzzy. It looks like a little patch of light. You know, it just looks different than a normal star would do. Now, if you can't see it naked eye, you need to sort of get used to going with your finder to, say, the middle of Orion's belt and just moving your way down. And it's fairly easy to spot because there is quite a little group of stars around the nebula, and it's possible even with your finder you'll see a little bit of nebulosity. And the reason why you want to try and practice finding it with your finder is that you're going to have your camera plugged into your scope. You know, so it'll help you this way. So next what we're going to do is we're going to go on to some settings and getting the camera actually switched on and before we start taking our image. So we'll catch you in a moment. Right, now we should have SharpCap started up, and it should look something like this because we haven't pointed it to any cameras yet. You should have your camera plugged into your telescope and connected up to your laptop and everything, and launch SharpCap. Now obviously whatever it shows on the preview screen in this tutorial is immaterial, because obviously we're not actually out there imaging, so you know, ignore whatever it shows on the preview screen. Now the first thing that you need to do is you switch on your webcam. You need to have that not in the LX mode. Yeah, I know it sounds strange, but this is the way that we go. So you should be not in LX mode. Now if you go up to cameras and you choose Philips SPC 900 NPC camera, or whatever your long exposure camera is, which 9 times out of 10 that's what it's going to be. and you can see there's actually two cameras listed for the Philips. One is LX mode, one is non-LX mode. It treats your camera as two separate cameras, even though it's not. So the first thing we need to do is Philips SPC 900NC, and once it finds the camera, like so, we'll get introduced to the control panel here. Now we'll go through some settings. Firstly, at this point, you want your exposure up all the way and your gain all the way as well, which is a bit contrary to what you'll have learned for sort of planetary and stuff, but don't worry about it and you'll start to understand as we work through. Now the other settings, again, gamma I like to leave in the middle, saturation I just like to have up just that little bit, contrast and brightness again in the middle, and up to the top where your video format is, those old favourites, which are YUY2, frame rate 10 frames per second, resolution 648 by 480. Now at this point what you want to do is point your scope at Betelgeuse or any other bright star. You know, it don't matter which one really, just a nice bright star. Betelgeuse is convenient because it's near to our target of Orion, and you want to try and get that star in the middle of your preview screen here. Now at this point, that's when you want to put on your Batinov mask and try and focus and get your pattern right for your focus. Now this is covered in a different tutorial on Batinov mask, so I'm not going to go through all the patterns and everything again because, like I say, it's already there. If you don't have a Batinov mask, then again a bright star is quite a good one for focusing on, because you want to try and get it as a nice point. Now if you're not using a Batinov mask, you will find that you'll need to take your exposure down a touch, maybe your gain down a touch, to take some of the vibrance out of that star. It'll probably be very, very bright and washed out if you're not using a Batinov. So just play about with your exposure and gain and just get that star to a pinpoint. You know, you can practice if you move through the focus sort of past and then come back again. You know, you start, obviously it starts to sort of widen out and broaden, and you know, just a few backwards and forwards with your focus will get used to it, to just try and make that star into a nice tight point. Now whichever way you've done it, once you've achieved your focus, be it Batinov mask or not, the next thing you want to do, if you've got a focus lock on your scope, which is usually just an old knob at your focuser, just tighten that off so that it locks your focus in that position. And next what we're going to do is you want to still keep in the same mode. You know, you're still in sort of short exposure mode at this point. Turn your exposure and your gain right back up again, and now get in your finder and just move towards the Orion Nebula, and you should start to see something in your preview screen, be it a couple of stars out of the triangulum, which is just in the group of stars just in the middle of the nebula there. It doesn't really matter what you see in your preview screen at the minute. All we're doing is we're checking that you're actually on target, and once you are on target and you're sure you're on target, then you know, obviously you're tracking, and we need to move back in now to the laptop. Now the first thing we need to do is, if we go again to cameras like so, move down to LX mode and select that. Now go over to your camera itself and switch your camera to LX mode, just flick it into LX. Now at this point you may get this window opens, and this is where you need to select your COM port for your long exposure. And as we've covered in other tutorials, again, exposure control line should be RTS, everything else should be none, and none of these boxes should be ticked. So just select OK, and as I said, make sure that you've now flicked your camera switch into LX mode. You'll now get a slightly different screen on your control side, and sometimes it might have just messed up these top settings, your video format. So once again, check over them and make sure that you're at YUY2, 10 and 640 before 80. Now then, again, we sort of it's a bit of a reversal of sort of short exposure photography, this, with regards to getting yourself set up. The bottom settings again are just the same as usual. You know, the gamma in the middle, the contrast in the middle, the brightness in the middle, saturation just up a little bit. colour enable all the way to the right, backlight compression all the way to the left. The two controls that we're most concerned with now is exposure and gain. Now the thing is that once we've gone over to long exposure mode, the exposure slider is now frames in seconds. So like if we've got 1.0 here, that's actually 1 frame per second. Now the first thing to do, again, like I said, it's sort of a reversal of doing, you know, the other sort of photography with sort of not long exposure. Turn your gain all the way up, and you know you'll start to see something then in your preview screen. Next, what we do is we mess about with the exposure, and at this point all we're doing is we're tuning. We're not actually set up yet for taking the images, and you want to be sort of taking your exposure up until you're starting to see something. And what we'll do in a moment is we'll go over and I'll show you a preview of what you should actually see on your laptop screen when you're in long exposure for Orion. But what we're going to do is we're going to take exposure up until we've got a fairly washed out image of Orion. And what you can do then is you can just fine tune your telescope position, just frame your picture so that you've got your Orion nicely in the middle of your preview screen. You know, your position's alright. And what we're going to do next is we're going to back the gain off. Now for deep space, I've found if I try and keep the gain quite low down, you know, not have it sort of way up here, I tend to get a better result at the end. You get less noise in your image and everything. So I tend to try and keep this below sort of 46. You know, 46 I would say is my maximum. So just back off with your gain a little bit and compensate by just taking your exposure up, you know, until sort of you get a picture that looks just right and it compares with what I'm going to show you in a moment. In fact, that's what we're going to do now, is I'm going to show you what it is that we're aiming to see in the preview screen. And like I said, just mess about with your exposure and your gain like I've shown you until you see something similar to what we're going on to next. Right, this is something like you should be seeing in your preview screen on your laptop. You know, we can see the triangulum in here and we can see the nebulosity and everything, and this is what should appear on you, like I say, on your preview screen on your laptop. Now at this point, if this is the first time that you've done it, at this stage it's really recommended, especially if it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, that you go upstairs and wake your wife up and your kids and everything and bring them outside to have a look at it, because they'll be really amazed at, you know, what you've achieved, and they'll be really enthusiastic about you going and getting them for it. Like I said, very important part of that. Now once you're messing about with your exposure and your gain, you will bring up more nebulosity, and it is a temptation to do it. Don't go there. You'll just wreck your picture. It'll be washed out and you just won't get the results that you want to achieve, really. Like I say, a little bit of patience. As we sort of work through, you'll see exactly where it all goes. So we've got some nebulosity in there. We've got a little bit of detail in the triangulum. Now sometimes you can, depending on when you've had a go at it a few times and you've had a little bit of practice, you might find that you want to try different effects. You know, you want to try and do an Orion where the triangulum isn't washed out and you can actually see some detail in there, and you will see sort of less nebulosity. Or again, as you progress and your learning curve gets bigger, you'll find that you'll do a few sets of pictures, some where the triangulum isn't burnt out and it's nice and sharp, and some where it is burnt out but you've got lots of nebulosity, and you can sort of learn to combine your pictures and make, you know, one whole with a lot of detail all the way through. Like I say, it's a learning curve that sort of grows with you, and at this stage all we're trying to get you to do is to get a really nice result that you're happy with, you know, that you're pleased with, and to get you just started on that road. So as I said, this is what we want to be looking for in the preview screen, and I would say that you want to take maybe at least 20 exposures. You may find that your exposure time in seconds is generally sort of between sort of 5, sometimes 4, up to about maybe 10 seconds. Like I say, it just depends on you know what it takes in your particular scope and your setup to get that similar image to that. But like I said, be less generous with the gain. You know, just knock the exposure up a little bit instead. Now, once we've got to that, like I say, maybe 4 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, depends on your setup. aim to take at least 20 exposures of it, because at the end of the day, even at 10 seconds, 20 times 10, it's not a great deal of time. It's not going to, it's not going to get boring. Now, once you've done that, once you've taken those 10 images, or 20 images rather, what you want to do next is to get your cap and put your cap on your scope and take another 10 images at exactly the same settings. Just set Sharp Cap up again to start again, and we'll go to that part again in a minute. We'll flick back to Sharp Cap and just go through that part. Okay, we're back in Sharp Cap again. The first thing now that you want to do, obviously here you will now see a picture like we've just gone from in your preview screen. What you next need to do is just go onto your desktop and make yourself a folder, call it Orion or Ori or something similar, and then next just go up to File and Set Capture Folder, and just choose that folder in this browser window. I'm just going to put mine onto desktop and select OK. Now the next thing you do is, it's the good part, is you're going to go up to Start Capture and you'll get this window open. Now depending on which variation of Sharp Cap you've got and whether it's been altered again, I like to use number of frames. It's just my favourite method, and this is the way it works in XP. If you've got Vista or Windows 7, sometimes things can be a little bit different. In that case, use either unlimited and just count your frames, or whichever way really. But it's just the way I prefer to do it is this way. So number of frames, we're going to set that for starters at 20. Even 40 is not too much. Even 50, even 150. It just depends how much time you've got and that you want to spend on it. But I will say that the more frames that you actually get, the better your finished image will be. So once we've done that, you'll click on Start, and it'll start taking your still images. I'm obviously going to stop that at that point because I don't want it filling my desktop full of pictures of white. But what you'll get is you'll get a folder with separate images in of what you're taking. Now at the point when that is finished, don't touch anything. Because what I want you to do next is I want you to get your lens cap for your telescope and put your lens cap on your telescope. Once you've done that, go up to Start Capture again and set yourself at about maybe 10 frames. 10's quite a good number, and that's going to take your darks. So you've got your lens cap on, not altered any more of your settings. You've just basically, that's it, just put your lens cap on, Start Capture again, and take 10 frames and let those 10 take. And next we're going to go over to the folder and we'll just show you what you should have in your folder. Okay, this is our folder now. This was our capture folder. You remember we made a folder called either Orion or Ori or something similar. And this is our capture folder once we've finished. Now you can see here that all our little Orion captures are here, all those little separate images, which is one image for each frame. And you will also see these black ones. Now the black ones are the ones that you made with the lens cap on, and they're quite important, these, and it's going to improve your picture quite a lot. Now the first thing you want to do once you're into this folder is to make another folder. So just new folder. Now call that folder darks, like so, and now you want to take each one of these black pictures, each one of your dark frames, and just move those into that darks folder, so that now you're just left with all your little settings text files. If you've got Sharp Cap to sort of take information files and save them as well, they'll all be there. And you'll have all your little Orion pictures there then, which if we bring one up, you can see there it is. It's it's the same image basically, and we're going to keep that same image all the way through the processing and everything. So like I said, this is what you should end up with now, and the darks one. Little explanation about darks and what they are. Your camera itself will have some interference in it, just all cameras do. Now if you put the lens cap on your telescope and you take some frames, you're not taking a photograph of anything that's an outside source, so that any interference that is on your camera, it's going to photograph just that interference. You know, if you got later on as you progress, if you've got some amp glow or something like that, you'll just have amp glow on your dark frames. If you've got any bad pixels, then you'll just have your bad pixels on those dark frames. And eventually what we do when we process is the software will take the dark frames away from your good frames. In other words, you know, any little bad bits then that are in your camera will be taken off. So it just gives you an overall better finish. So next what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at DSS and processing this little lot. Right, here we are in Deep Sky Stacker, and now we want to bring our pictures into the software. So the first thing that we do is up at the top, open picture files, and we want to scroll to the folder where our pictures are, and just bring in all of your pictures, like so. Click on open, and just give it a moment, and there we are. Now we can click on the first one, and you can now use your arrow keys to scroll through all your images. And I'd recommend you do that, is just have a flick through, work down your images like so. If you find any bad ones, you know, if your telescope's been knocked or you've got, you know, a really badly blurred one or anything, then just get that particular picture and right click it. And I use erase from disk because, you know, it's just going to take it off you. It's going to completely erase the file, which, you know, you're not going to use it. It's a blurred image, it's no good. So just work through and just take out any particularly bad images. Next, what we want to do is go up to the top, work down again, check all, and we've now checked all our actual images. Now the next thing we want to do, we want to bring those dark files in. So up to the top again, click on dark files, and just scroll to the folder where your darks are, which obviously for ours they're actually in that Orion folder, as we had you make earlier. So let me just find that, darks, and again highlight all of them and click on open, like so. Now if you scroll down your picture list, you'll see that your actual image frames are all look like this, with this little icon at the side of them, and as you scroll down, your darks look like this, little dark frames. Now the software will do all the work on it for you. That's all you have to do. You don't have to, you know, do any sort of silliness with your dark frames or anything. It's a very good piece of software, Deep Sky Stacker, and it'll work everything out for you. But the next thing that we need to do now is move over to Register Checked Pictures, and you'll get this little window. Now what you want to do is click on Advanced and compute the number of detected stars. Just let it do that. Won't take a moment. Or normally it doesn't, except in this sort of instance we're recording the screen and I've got all sorts of software open at the same time. So let it just check that little lot. There we go. Now this is at 14. Now the minimum number of stars that Deep Sky Stacker wants to be able to recognise an image and to align everything up, it really wants 8 stars. If you find that you've got sort of less than 8, then take the star detection threshold down a little bit, and again press the compute the number of stars again. Like I said, 14 in this case is it's fairly fine, that. So once we've got that and we've got a number of stars sort of above 8, then just click on OK and OK again, and let Deep Sky Stacker do its work. Now this might take a moment, so what we're going to do is we're going to pause the recording and I'll come back as soon as it's finished this part. Right, here we are, it's now finished doing the work, and you'll get presented with something that probably looks similar to this, very washed out and everything. Don't worry about it, that's just how it happens, it's meant to look that way. Now the first thing that we're going to do is, you can see these colours aren't aligned and they need moving over a little bit as well. So let's just have a play and take the red over to perhaps about here, and the green, again, you want to overlay them. You're trying to get them as closely overlaying each other as you can. like so. That should about do it. And then the blue, same thing, just overlay those colours as best you can really. And once you click on apply, you can see now that it's darkened our image down. There's quite a lot more in there now than what there was previously, you know, in your frames that you're actually taking. But we're not finished there yet. What you need to do next is click on the saturation tab and just take that up to usually about 18. I find is a fairly comfortable number, and click apply again, and you'll start to bring your colours in. And now you can go back to your RGB and K levels, this tab, and you can just, you know, have a little tweak about again, you know, maybe line it up a little bit by just moving them over to the right. But as I said, you want to be keeping these colours overlaid, you know, one on top of the other, because what you'll do if you don't is you'll bring out either a predominance of red or a predominance of blue or a predominance of green, you know, and you want them evenly matched. So again, click on apply, and that's just lightened it up that little bit. Now don't forget that in Deep Sky Stacker we're not looking for our finished image, we're looking for, you know, just something that's quite nice, which, you know, this is looking quite well at the moment. Now if we click the Luminance tab, again you've got some sliders. The one that has the most effect is the mid-tone one. Now be quite careful with these and just make small movements and click apply. As you can see, we've washed quite a lot of our nebulosity out again there. So just back that off a little bit, click apply, and like I said, just play about with them. But they are, some of them that have quite a big effect for only a slight movement. And as I say, this is going to be your first Orion, so, you know, we're on the side of caution. Don't push things too far on this occasion. You know, I mean, later you can have a practice and you know, build up sort of your knowledge. But for me, that's looking quite all right at the moment. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to save that image. So what we do is we move over to the options and save picture to file. Now it's important that under options you have apply adjustments to the saved image. If you don't, it'll save a picture of before processing, if you like. It won't have added all your adjustments into it. So just make sure that apply adjustments to the saved image is clicked. Now also under compression, click none. You don't want to compress it. It's not going to be a massive file, and if you do compress it, then you're just going to start losing quality. So no compression, and just give your picture a name. So we'll call this Orion Tutorial, and click save. Now once you've saved that image, we're actually now finished with Deep Sky Stacker, and we're going to open this image up next in our graphics package. Now I know that a lot of people favour Photoshop, and I'm going to use Photoshop, but it's not that big a deal at this level. You know, if you get more advanced and everything, then, you know, by all means. But if you've got GIMP, or if you've got PaintShop Pro or whatever, I'm going to keep everything as simple as I possibly can on this occasion, just basically to get you started and you know, well on the road. So we're not going to go into any advanced processing and stuff. We're just going to use some simple stuff to get a nice acceptable result. So that's where we're going to go next. We're going to go over to our graphics package. Right, we've finally got our picture loaded up into Photoshop, and you'll have read in different places that, you know, there's all sorts of filters that you can apply, and there's actions that you can buy and have sort of, you know, Astro actions and everything to add into Photoshop and everything. But in this instance, I just want to keep everything as simple as I possibly can. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the levels in this image. And you've probably read quite a bit about curves and levels when people are talking about astro photographs. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at the levels. So if we go up to Image and Adjustments, Levels, and you can see that we've got a few sort of pointers here. It's all to do with your levels of dark and light, and you can even start playing with your different channels, so your reds and your greens and your blues. And, you know, later on you probably will do, but for the moment we're going to stick with just RGB. And what this does is just play about with it. You know, you start to change the overall brightness of different areas of your image. You know, you can sort of darken the darks and lighten the lights, and sort of change your grey, what we call your grey area, which is sort of you're in between your black and your white, and you can start to sort of introduce more detail into your picture, but you've got to be careful that you don't start to wash other parts out. So it's definitely sort of a play around with it more than anything else. There are no hard and fast rules with your levels. Just, you know, have a play about and get to somewhere that you like. You know, if you think that you've messed up in any way, just click the cancel button and start again. So what we'll do is we'll just adjust these levels a little bit and get something that's looking like, you know, something that I'm quite pleased with, which that's not looking bad there at the moment. So we'll click OK and accept those settings. Now, another one that's a really good tool for astro pictures, and it don't matter whether you're using Photoshop or Paint Shop Pro or GIMP, they've all got this. And what it is, it's the Sharpen Unsharp mask filter. And if you go to there, again, it's playing about, and you can start to bring more detail and sharpen stuff up. You know, sometimes you've got to be careful. If you get too heavy-handed with it, you get this sort of effect. But just, again, those subtle little changes can make a whole world of difference. You sometimes find where you get areas where the nebulosity meets the dark, and it starts to look a bit fuzzy and just, you know, poorly defined, and your unsharp masks can sometimes just blend those in a little bit better. And again, just, you know, play about with it, and at the end of the day, it's what you are happy with. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you do these pictures for yourself. And there we go, we'll click OK on that. It's looking quite nice. Finally, we'll just go over and play about with some curves. And again, image adjustment, curves, and this is your curve screen. And again, just play with it. The best way to learn with this stuff is just to play about and find, you know, something that you're happy with. You can see that as we drop those curves down there, we're starting to bring more differences out in the subtle shades and everything. Now, what you can do is you can start to think that it's maybe washed out a little bit as you bring in some more of that detail out and those differences. But what you can do then is you can click OK and go back to levels like so, and you can sort of define it a little bit better. You know, there's no hard and fast rules. You don't have to just like use levels once. You know, you can make some changes and use levels again, and even use curves again, and just play with your image. Don't forget that you've got your primary image that you've already done in Deep Sky Stacker. So this, you can have as many goes at it as you want. You know, just have a really good play around with your curves and your levels and your, you know, I mean, you might find that it's sometimes it's maybe a little bit too sharp. You know, you've got too many sort of sharp edges, and in that case, you can start to apply other filters. You know, you can blur a little bit. Just put, whoa, that didn't do it very good. But like I said, if you make a mistake like that, it's not a problem. Just go to Edit and Undo. But yeah, your blur filters, you can sort of add a little bit of blur in there just to take out, you know, some of that sharpness, and you can do it again if it's not quite done it enough. Then again, go up and add it some more. And I find that with such as Sharpen and blur, you'll always get better results if you use just blur several times as opposed to using blur more, which you will find in graphics package. You know, you usually find like Sharpen and Sharpen more. It usually produces much better results if you do just use the Sharpen and use it several times. You seem to have more control over it. And there's our overall image, which, you know, I think you'll agree it's looking quite well. And for a first Orion, I'd be more than happy with it. And, you know, if you follow this tutorial all the way through, you know, there's no reason why you can't produce similar results to this. You know, everything's there for you now, and I hope you get something out of it. And once again, thanks a lot for watching.